starting right away on the forearm armor. Please make sure to review the bicep construction videos because the same principles will apply to every single other limb in building your Stormtrooper armor. Here we are, we're about to size up our forearm armor, and we're just using a pencil to mark the return edge where we're going to be trimming it off. If you're building the armor for Centurion specifications, which is like a higher level of accuracy on whitearmor.net for the 501st Legion, you trim all of the return off on the wrist openings on both the outer forearm and the inner forearm. For the elbow side of the armor, you want to leave about an 1/8 to 3/16 of an inch of return, just so that it looks like there's a little bit of thickness to it. And here we are, we're just sanding the edges off to make sure they're nice and smooth, and we are going to be making some pencil marks and drawing some straight lines, just like we did on the biceps, and leaving that sort of 8.5 millimeter width on that formed ridge. There I am trimming that off. And once I've trimmed that off, we will size that up to the inner forearm again and see how much of an overlap there is. And we're going to tape it up and then make some pencil marks on the inner forearm. And what you want to do is try to size it in such a way that you can still get your hand through the wrist opening of the armor and not have the forearm be too big. And when you make your pencil marks, you want them to be sort of equal or symmetrical on both the left and right side of the armor. So we're trimming, approximately about 1/2 inch off on the armor. You can see also the inner elbow scoop is being cut and trimmed a little bit, just to make it a little bit more comfortable where it sort of fits in the crook of your elbow when your arm bends. Now that's kind of more of a personal preference or personal fit thing, but you want to make sure to tape it together and size it up first before you make those very, very critical cuts. So just using a strip of plastic or a ruler to draw the straight lines where we're going to be trimming. And here, just as a bit of an experiment, instead of using the Lexan scissors, I'm going to use like a score and snap technique. So very much like making or cutting the cover strips, you're going to run your hobby blade a few times over the plastic using a steel ruler as a guide and then snapping it off. And so now, hopefully when we tape the halves of the armor together, they'll be the right size. And here we are doing a little bit of a test fit, making sure that everything's good, and the fitment looks pretty good. And just making sure that all the cover strips are going to fit as well too. Here we are just doing a bit of a test fit with the bicep, making sure that the movement is good, and again making sure that there's no pinch and making sure that the elbow opening is big enough. So here I am, I'm about to glue the cover strips on. I've taped the armor together on the inside, and I've made sure that the outer surfaces, the 17 millimeters, bridging the gap, the seam between the armor, 8.5 millimeters on each side, has been sanded down. And again, those measurements are kind of approximate. They're sort of dependent on your personal size. They're originally about 15 to 18 millimeters. And in our case, I'm building this armor for the cover strips to be 17 millimeters. And here I'm just trimming the corners off just a little bit, just a couple millimeters, and just sanding the sharp edges down, again making sure that it fits. You can see that I've also labeled the cover strips with A and B so that I know which one goes on which side, just in case one of them is slightly longer than the other. And I'm squeezing out my E6000 cement now, and I'm using a scrap piece of plastic to smooth that out. Again, one of the tricks is to not spread the cement right to the edge of the cover strip, leaving just a little bit of a gap so that when you clamp it down it'll probably squish out. And now I'm sanding or preparing the forearm armor for the adhesive. I've already sanded those edges down, so I'm applying a bead of E6000 glue and I'm spreading it out. Now I'm doing it to the inner forearm first because you can see kind of the tape sort of moves it back and forth, so it's a little bit easier to do maybe one side and then do the other side. It's a little less messy that way. And this is fine, I'm letting the E6000 tack up over the course of 2 or 3 minutes, which is fine. It's not going to completely dry out. You actually want it a little bit tacky between the two pieces. So I'm just prepping my masking tape and applying that to the cover strip first, so that right when I line it up, I can pull the masking tape tight, and it'll help pull the armor together and prevent the cover strip from moving. And I want the cover strip to be right at the edge or end of both sides of the armor. Even if it's like a hair longer, that's okay. It's better to have it a hair longer than a hair short. So here I am, I'm just sort of pressing down the masking tape to make sure that it's firmly in place. I'm trying out a couple of different clamps here. If you're using bigger clamps, you might need a wood shim inside to take up the space caused by the formed ridge in the outer armor. In this case, I'm using the small bar clamps, and I'm making sure to have the handles, the long extensions of the bar clamp, facing out away from the armor. If you have it facing across the armor, it's going to be hard to get the other clamp on the other side if you're gluing cover strips, both of them on at the same time. And here I'm applying my 3/4 inch rare earth magnets, so being very, very careful with these, holding one of the magnets on the outside of the cover strip and the other one inside the armor. And in some cases when you're constructing armor, you can use an extra clamp if you can reach in there, but for demonstration purposes here, I'm just going to be using some magnets on this side of the armor. So I've decided to use 3 magnets. I think I end up putting 4 of them across when I finish this video. Here I'm about to do the other side. You can see there's a little gap, a little separation between the inner forearm and the outer forearm. Sometimes that happens depending on the armor make that you have, but it's okay. You know, by the time you get it all taped together and glued together with a cover strip put on, it'll kind of pull those parts together if you've done it properly. So here I am again. I'm applying my E6000 to the inner forearm, or sort of like the lower piece first, just a little bit cleaner instead of trying to get glue on both portions. And a little trick there is I've just rolled up the end of the tube of E6000 so that I can kind of get maximum pressure when I'm squeezing the tube of glue. And again, prepping my masking tape, putting that on the cover strips first, and applying it, lining it up. Again, this is the B cover strips. I already did the A side, now I'm doing the B side. And I'm just adjusting it a little bit more, applying some tension, putting a bar clamp on. And here I'm showing, you know, not to cross the bar clamp across the inside of the armor, just making sure that the bar clamp extension is facing the right way. So I'm just pulling that tape down firmly, and I'm applying my next set of rare earth magnets. And there it is, pretty much set. So I just let that set overnight. 24 hours will be, you know, really, really solid, but I usually do it for about like overnight, usually like 12 hours is just fine. So here I decided, I actually ran out of magnets, I had to run back inside to grab some, so I grabbed a couple of extra rare earth magnets and decided to put just a couple more on to make sure that that cover strip was fully set. And then after that I leave it, and it's pretty much good to go. Just kind of let that cure. So there's the finished forearm. You can see how the magnets are attached to both sides. That's why I usually try to get a few more sets of magnets. And the clamps are nicely evenly spaced, and I can just let that sit overnight. You can see a little bit of glue oozing out, but that's okay. We'll clean that up after it cures overnight. Alright everybody, so it's actually been about 24 hours, and getting ready to take off all the clamps and magnets from this forearm. Oops, lost a little clip there from one of these clamps. So the glue's hardened up. It's probably going to be a little bit tougher to remove, just kind of the glue boogers, because I accidentally left it a little bit too long and didn't get a chance to get back to this particular piece just yet, but that's okay, we'll make it work. A couple little tricks that you can do to remove the glue so it's not too tough. But yeah, once the glue has set, it's pretty much, you'll sort of feel the glue tack up over the course of, you know, even like an hour or two, it'll start to firm up, but you definitely don't want to remove any of the tape or anything like that that soon. You want to let it cure at least kind of overnight before you start to take stuff apart. I've taken stuff apart, yeah, overnight, kind of like 12 hours. That's about as quick as I want to leave it. If you do it any sooner than that, I've been in a rush a few times and taken tape and magnets off, and you know, cover strips will actually kind of peel off if you don't give it enough time to cure. So it's always best to give it enough time to cure if you can, and you know, 10 to 12 hours at least works best. If possible, leave it a little bit overnight. So it's good to have some, strips of metal or something that you can put your magnets on so they're not flying all over the place. And here we go. So piece looks really good. I'm just going to peel all this extra tape off. And again, not worrying about the pencil marks or anything. You can take that off with just like a little rag and some rubbing alcohol. It'll remove that. But it's always nice to kind of keep stuff labeled just so that you know where everything goes. Just get all this tape off here. There's tons of tape on the inside. Maybe I just won't do that just yet because that's pretty straightforward. You can do that on your own. So let's see kind of how cured up it is. So you can see a bunch of glues kind of oozed out just along the cover strip there. And we'll just use our little, cut a little piece of popsicle stick here again. And again, I'm not doing it this way, right? I'm not doing it this way. I don't want to leave any marks on the armor surface. I'm doing it along the side, so it's just the cover strip that takes a little bit of the rubbing. And yeah, you can see it's just going to be a little bit of elbow grease, but you can see the glue boogers there are just coming off, right? So just going to speed up this video a bit so that you can kind of see how to get that off. You want to make sure that when you're pulling it off that you're not pulling it all the way out, like from underneath the seam. If you've got areas like this that are a little bit thick, you can kind of do this trick. Just kind of use your X-Acto blade and just score along the glue a little. You don't want to push too hard, and you definitely don't want to cut into the plastic itself. What you're doing is just kind of scribing the glue, and that'll actually make it a lot easier to remove. So once you kind of work your popsicle stick back and forth here, right, it'll come out along that seam. So that's kind of how you get it all off. Don't know if you need to watch an entire video of me removing glue boogers from a piece of armor, but hopefully you get the idea, right? So that's going to be the finished forearm, and then we'll copy the measurements to the other side, and we're good to go.